Magandang hapon. Ako po si Trixie Cruz-Angeles. Ayan, magandang hapon. Huwag pong kakalimutan, like, share, follow, and subscribe. Dito po ang Luminous. Kaninang umaga, meron pong tinatawag na preliminary conference on 3 cases of disqualification laban kay BBM. Ito ang Akbayan versus Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Bonifacio Ilagan et al., each includes Loretta Rosales as one of the petitioners laban kay Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Mangelen. Hold on, let me double check lang yung ating ano, Abubakar M. Mangelen versus Bongbong Marcos for both cancellation of certificate of candidacy and disqualification. The earlier 2 cases, Ilagan and Akbayan cases, ay mga petitions for disqualification. Ano ang preliminary conference? Ang preliminary conference po ay isa dun sa mga paraan na itinatalaga ng Korte Suprema para mamadali ang isang kaso. So, ganito po kasi ang hearing. Sa isang hearing, lahat ng mga ina-assert. Halimbawa, pag sinabing, kahapon nung gumising ng alas 4 ng umaga si so-and-so, ganito ang ginawa niya. I-establish mo lahat yon as a fact. So, you will present evidence on that. So, lahat ng mga assertions, halimbawa, pagbabayad ng income tax, pag-file ng compliance, so lahat ng mga assertions na ginagawa sa isang paglilitis ay kailangan pinapatunayan. So, ang ginagawa natin, ayon sa Korte Suprema, tinatalaga yung preliminary conference. Dito sa kumperensya na ito, itinatalaga na kung ano yung issue na ililitis ng ahensya. Whether it is the COMELEC, kasi ina-adapt ng COMELEC ang rules of court, o ang magistrado o ang huwes. So, i-establish doon, ano ba ang dinidecide dito ng ahensya? So, nag-propose kanina ang dalawang partido, inadopt po nung Ilagan case yung mga pagtatalaga ng issue na isinagawa ng Akbayan. So ang unang pagtatalaga nila ng issue ay whether or not disqualified yung respondent, in this case BBM, for failure to file ITR from 1982 to 1985 or 4 years because the offense involves moral turpitude. At violation ito, ayon sa kanila, ng Section 12 ng Omnibus Election Code. Okay? Are you with me so far? Kamusta naman po tayo dyan? Alright. Sinabi din ng petitioners na yung gusto nila rin i-decide ng hukuman or ng ahensya, this case the COMELEC, whether or not disqualified siya because he had been convicted of a crime involving not of a crime penalized by 3 years or 36 months. So, dalawa yung pre-propose nila. One is that he was convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude and therefore he should be disqualified. And 2, he was convicted of a crime punishable by 36 months at least, which is above the 18-month 16-month limit na nakatalaga doon sa Omnibus Election Code. Ang proposal naman ng respondents, BBM, ay whether or not qualified si BBM tumakbo bilang kandidato sa pagkapangulo ng Republika. Alright? So, ang gagawin ng ahensya is susuriin nila itong mga proposal ng dalawang partido at i-combine or itatalaga kung ano nga ang i-decide ng ahensya, ano ang i-decide ng COMELEC dito. So, pagka nakita natin yung decision later on ng COMELEC, nakalagay doon, eto yung facts, eto yung issue. The issue is whether or not BBM is qualified to run as president or whether or not BBM has been disqualified for being convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude or having been convicted of a crime punishable by over 18 months, 16 months. All right? So, hindi pa yan dinidecide ng ahensya, hindi yan dinidecide kanina, tinanggap lang nila yung mga proposals for determination kung ano yung issue. After that, itatalaga naman yung mga proposals para sa establishing ng facts, what we call stipulations of fact. Ano yung mga stipulations of fact? Dahil nga sinasabi natin sa isang paglilitis, bukod sa meron kayong argumento, ipapatunayan niyo muna yung antecedent facts. So halimbawa, papatunayan nila yung conviction, ito yung petitioner, at yung yung na itong conviction na ito ay crime involving moral turpitude or conviction of a crime punishable with a penalty of over 3 years. So ano yung fact doon? Yung conviction. Normally, i-establish nila yan. So, magpipresenta sila ng ebidensya, pipresenta pa sila ng mga kopya ng desisyon, and so on. Kapag na-stipulate nyo, hindi na kailangan patunayan yan dahil tinatanggap ng kabilang partido. That way, ang laki ng portion ng trial na hindi na kailangan ituloy o ilitis pa kasi inaamin naman ng parehong partido na yung fact na yon. Okay? So halimbawa, it is possible na aminin ng respondent at in this case, inamin naman nila ng respondent yung stipulation of fact na na-convict si BBM in the regional trial court. Pero hindi nila inaamin yung conviction in the Court of Appeals. Okay? Sino yung sinasabi ninyong sabog? Si Rai. Okay. Sinasabi nitong si Rai D. Solatorio, ang COMELEC po ang magde-decide, attorney, hindi kayo. Wala kaming pinag-uusapan dito kung ano ang magiging desisyon. And as a matter of fact, ini-explain lang namin yung mga proseso na dinaanan kanina, including the philosophy behind holding a preliminary conference. Tulad nga ng sinabi natin, ginawa ito, finormulate ito ng Korte Suprema sa Rules of Court at ina-adapt naman ng COMELEC yung mga Rules of Court suppletorily to their own rules para mapabilis yung paglilitis dito. Lalong-lalo na in cases of election controversies, mas maganda yung mas mabilis yung pagtakbo ng kaso. Kaya merong preliminary conference. Kaya Mr. Solatorio, wag naman po niyong mamasamain kung ini-explain namin yung proseso dito. Pwedeng-pwede naman kayong magpalit ng channel kung hindi po kayo happy dun sa discussion dito. And at any rate, ini-encourage ng Korte Suprema ang magpagdidiscuss at papalaganap ng impormasyon tungkol sa mga proseso para naiintindihan ng ordinaryong tao kung ano ang pinagdadaanan ng mga partido sa isang paglilitis. Para rin hindi nagiging nagkakaroon ng tinatawag natin na unmet expectations pagdating dito sa mga court processes or in this case quasi-judicial processes katulad nitong sa Commission on Elections. Okay? We're not here to take your side or even anybody's side kasi nga nililitis pa yung kaso dito. Although, in some instances, mismo rin, sabi mo, acquittal sa CA, hindi na conviction. Yun yung stipulation ng respondent. Pero meron kasing argumento dun sa isang petitioner na dun sa Court of Appeals, wala kasing, aside from removing lang yung penalty for imprisonment, it doesn't remove the fact daw of the conviction. Okay, so medyo this is a fine point. Siguro we will discuss this separately later on. Sabi ni Gracia, si Solatorio ayaw niyang i-explain ni attorney because we all know walang basis ang petitioners. Well, we'll just go through what the preliminary conference said today, what happened in the preliminary conference. We don't even need to take sides. Ngayon, merong ibang mga nagsasabi kinakabahan daw sila kasi parang kabado daw yung mga abogado or yung abogado ni BBM. I think that's attorney Hannah. Let me see, what's her last name? Attorney Hannah Barcena. Ang umapil naman dun sa Ilagan case, si Attorney Jake Fajardi, at dun para sa Akbayan, si Attorney Antonio Salvador. Alright. Bago nag-umpisa yung hearing ay naging issue at nagkaroon ng konting intayan ang komisyon dahil wala po ang respondent, wala po si BBM. So, hindi po nadidiscuss ng ibang nagkokomentaryo pa dito kung ano yung significance nito. This is very significant kasi dun sa rules of court, kapag hindi dumating yung isang partido sa preliminary conference, mahalaga po kasi ang preliminary conference, lalong-lalo na yung abogado pag hindi dumating, Well, hahanapin ng hukuman yan. And in this case, hinanap nga ng COMELEC. Because if you are a party to the case at hindi ka dumating, it's possible that you will become either defaulted or non-suited. Kung ikaw ang petitioner at hindi ka dumating, non-suited, so madi-dismiss yung kaso. That's just the simplest way of explaining it. Or kung ikaw naman ang respondent, hindi ka nabibigyan ng pagkakataon sumagot o magpresenta ng ebidensya dahil madi-default ka na. Okay. Yun po ang ibig sabihin nun. Kaya mahalaga po yung determination earlier on kung bakit wala si BBM. So as it turns out, in-explain naman ni Attorney Hannah na yung na hindi dumating si BBM is because he was in isolation dahil siya ay na-expose sa 2 tao na nag-test positive for COVID. Among them, his spokesman, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, at yung kanyang security. Pareho po sila nag-positive, so he had to go into isolation. Dahil hindi siya maipakita sa Zoom, hinanap siya talaga ni Cobb Guanzon kung pwede daw kahit magpakita siya doon sa Zoom, tatanggapin na niya yon. Hindi na siya ma-default or anything like that. Pero instead, they submitted a medical certificate to justify kung bakit kahit sa Zoom hindi siya pwede. And in this case, mukhang on its face, tinanggap naman ni Cobb Guanzon yung medical certificate which was sent electronically. Okay? Oy, wag niyo nang awayan si Mr. Solatorio. I don't think that he expected that anything here would be approaching the level of objectivity that he is used to dun sa kabila. Okay? Sabi ni Mary Ann Salvner, ay, nagpadala siya ng super sticker. Maraming salamat, Ma'am Mary Ann. Okay? So, doon sa stipulation sa fact, medyo mahaba ito. Although, maraming instances na napagalitan ni Cobb Guanzon yung mga lawyers. And let's deal with that one first. Anong nangyayari during a stipulation of facts? Sa stipulation of facts, yung isang party, mag-uumpisa yan dun sa petitioner, sabihin ng petitioner, okay, can we stipulate that respondent was convicted in the regional trial court? Yun yung first stipulation nila. Agree. Sabi nung una, nag-hesitate yung counsel for the respondent, pero ultimately, inadmit naman nila yung conviction at the regional trial court. Nung una kasi, nung nag-hesitate si respondent, napagalitan ni Cobb Guanzon. Later on, yung attorney for petitioner Akbayan. Sabi niya, ayaw na ayaw daw niya pagka yung isang lawyer ay nagkikriticize sa ibang lawyer. Kasi parang nag-a-attempt yung counsel ng Akbayan na, ganito naman yun bakit hindi pa kayo umamin? Parang ganon. Ganito, kasi pag sa stipulation of facts, sasabihin lang ng isang partido, ito yung for stipulation, pwede lang sabihin, ang sasabihin lang ng respondent, we will admit that fact or we will not admit that fact. Pag not admitted, kailangan pa nilang patunayan. Pag admitted, no need na patunayan. Usually, mag-a-admit yung parehong party dun sa isang stipulation of fact if it works in their favor. Kasi pagka it doesn't really work in their favor, bibigay mo yung burden dun sa party na patunayan muna nila yung fact na yun bago nila i-argue na mayroong offense dito. Okay? So, eto. So, yung isang stipulation was yung first stipulation yan, normally ito sa preliminary conference. The first stipulation pertains to jurisdiction. So, sinasabi ng petitioner, we admit the jurisdiction of the COMELEC. So, in this case, lahat naman aminado. So, sinabi ng respondent, we admit the jurisdiction of the COMELEC. Wala namang ibang ahensya or hukuman na may jurisdiction dito. Dati kasi kapag merong it depends on the stage of the election, kapag below a certain level, halimbawa barangay, hindi po yan sa COMELEC necessarily ililitis kung hindi sa MTC or sa RTC. Okay? So, in this case, there is no issue on jurisdiction. So, pumayag yung lahat ng partido na may jurisdiction ng COMELEC, not only over the persons, the parties themselves, but also over the issue na inaharap nila at pinapalitis doon sa ating COMELEC. Yung sa second, ang stipulation ng kabila was counsel for, meron ako na-skip. Ayan, if BBM, ang stipulation ng kabila second was whether or not was that BBM was vice governor from 1982 to 1983. Admitted naman. The next stipulation was BBM was governor from 1983 to 1986. Admitted naman yon. So doon naman sa nag-stipulate din yung kabila, yung Party for Akbayan, yung Council for Akbayan, ang sabi that BBM did not resign as governor. Hindi yan ina-admit ng Council for BBM. The next stipulation was whether or not BBM was guilty beyond reasonable doubt of violation of the NIRC for failure to file his ITR. Dito, dininay po ng initially dininay ng counsel for respondent ito, but nung kinlarify ito at sinabi ni Com Guanzon, they're just stipulating on the RTC. So, sige, pwede namang hindi tanggapin or pwedeng tanggapin. In this case, tinanggap naman yung conviction at the regional trial court because that is not an admission that there is conviction by final judgment. Okay? Ang very significant dito, ang conviction by final judgment kasi yung pagpapataw ng penalty mangyayari lang kapag final na yung desisyon ng hukuman. So, the next stipulation was whether or not he was convicted and for failure to pay income taxes. Ang sabi ng counsel for respondent, we admit, but we stipulate that he had appealed. So, ang sinasabi ni Kong Guanzon, all right, it's admitted, but you can stipulate later on about what happened in the Court of Appeals. So, next, the pinapastipulate ng petitioner na kasama dun sa sentensya niya ay imprisonment of 3 years. So sabi ng respondent, hindi namin i-admit yan. So ibig sabihin, kailangan ng patunayan yung fact na yon ng mga abogado for the petitioner. So maraming salamat kay Arafat Pukaan para dun sa iyong super chat. Okay? Napagalitan na naman yung counsel ng petitioner nung nag-i-insist siya. Bakit hindi daw aminin na lang ito? At yan, sinabi na naman ni Com Guanzon, kailan ka ba naging abogado? Hindi mo ba alam kung ano yung nangyayari dito sa stipulations? Huwag mo nang kumbaga, hindi po kasi ito ang panahon para i-argue yun. Kahit po dun sa regional trial court, kapag may preliminary conferences kami, sasabihin lang ng isang party, we stipulate this. Pag ayaw ng respondent, we do not stipulate this, disagree. Yan ay ipapatunayan during sa paglilitis. Meron pang portion dito sa sa stipulations na sinabi ni Com Guanzon, do you admit or do you not admit? Sabi niya dun sa respondent, at dahil hindi sure si Attorney Hannah, she decided to say we will not admit. So sabi nga ni Com Guanzon, that is correct. When you're in doubt, deny it. Para patunayan pa ng kabila, walang mawawala kung i-deny mo at mapatunayan ng kabila as long as hindi ka umaamin over something na you're not ready to admit na baka makasira pa ng kaso. Guys, if you will notice, sa dami ng mga posts ko about these election cases, hindi namin po kini-question ang integridad ni Com Guanzon. We know her personally, and yes, while I agree that she has different political opinions at siya po ay itinalaga sa kanyang pwesto ni Pinoy, it does not imply anything other than the fact that she's an Aquino appointee, and that is it. hindi na kami nag-i-issue ng opinion as to whether or not she's going to be fair on this, because number one, we have not seen any action on her part that makes us think that there's going to be anything unfair about this hearing. Sa ngayon, wala pa tayong nakikita at wala kami nakikita. We trust the process for now because there is no evidence otherwise. Eto, nagpa-stipulate din yung partido ng Akbayan na nagbayad ng deficiency income taxes si BBM for 1982 to 1985. Denied ito ng respondent. Ang sabi nila is that he paid income tax. So it will now be the burden of the petitioner to prove that. Sabi rin ng petitioner, nagpapastipulate sila na hindi daw binayaran ni BBM yung fine for 82 and 85, up to 85. Sabi ng respondent, hindi namin tinatanggap po yan. So, at this point, tinanong ni Comweng, do you have evidence of this? Meron po, sa what exhibit is that? Andito po naka-attach yun dun sa sagot namin, this is exhibit so and so, at ito ay mamarkahan later on. Kasi ang third aspect ng preliminary conference ay marking ng evidence. And if you know, if I'm going to be asked my opinion, this is the most boring part of the hearings because you have to mark each and every stick of evidence that you have, all the affidavits and all the pages of that affidavit, all the documents and all the pages of that document, and including sub-markings such as kunwari Exhibit A, Exhibit A-1, Exhibit 1-A, exhibit so and so. So on the part of the petitioner, it will be A, B, C, D, E. Exhibits will be marked A, B, C, D, E. For the respondent, exhibits will be marked as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sub-markings will be letters. In the case of the petitioner, sub-markings will be numbers. So, Exhibit 2, kung may tinatanong ni BJ Cans, Exhibit 2 is an exhibit for the respondents. So, nung sinabi ni Attorney Hannah, that would be exhibit number so and so, and you're saying it's exhibit 2, hindi po tayo sure. But at any rate, that's how they're going to be numbered. That's why you will know kung kanino yung ebidensya na yon. Alright, the additional stipulations, sinasabi ng petitioner that he did not pay the fines in the RTC. So, sinabi din nila yung certificate na pipresenta nila as evidence, the certification from the regional trial court that the fines were not paid in the regional trial court. So, in this case, they reserve ng counsel for respondent yung right nila to present evidence as against that. So, ibig sabihin, it's not necessarily admitted or admitted with reservation. Sabi naman ng petitioner, BBM, nagpa-stipulate sila na si BBM daw ay chairman ng PhilComSat that at the time was a government-owned and controlled corporation. Supposedly, I assume that they were going to try to prove that that BBM had other income, and we'll explain that later on. So ito na po yung stipulation, I think, ng kabilang ng Ilagan case. Okay? So dininay ito ng partido ni BBM. Doon sa inadapt pala yon ng Ilagan. Okay. After yung stipulations ng partido ng Akbayan, hindi nagpresenta ng further stipulations ang respondent, in this case BBM's party. Yung Council for Ilagan, in-adopt nila lahat ng stipulations ng Akbayan, pero nagpapa-clarify sila ng payment of fines. Sabi ni Com Guanzon, huwag niyong i-argue yan dito, stipulations lang. Ano yung pinipresenta ninyo na fact? So, nag-propose sila na ang stipulation nila na hindi nag-file ng ITR si BBM at saka walang bayad ng fine dun sa court. Sabi ni respondent, sige, ganito na lang. We will admit that we paid the fine in land bank. So we paid the fines na itinalaga ng Court of Appeals. Stipulation ulit, yung failure to file return, denied po ng respondent. Tapos, tinanong dito ni Com Guanzon, O bakit petitioner, bakit mo kasi ang gusto ng partido ni Ilagan ay stipulate na hanggang ngayon hindi pa nagfa-file ng ITR si BBM on his income from 1982 to 1985. So tinanong ni Com Gonzon, ano yung relevance niyan? Inamin na nga nila na binayaran nila yung fine for failure to pay the ITR. So, uh, sabi nila, kasi hanggang ngayon di pa rin siya nagfa-file ng ITR. Kaya nga tapos na, nalitis na yan, na-establish, hindi nga siya nag-file ng ITR, so he paid the fine. Bakit pinipilit ninyo na mag-file pa siya ng ITR? Samantalang the purpose kasi of the ITR is to establish the income and to, if an accomplished ITR na stamped and received will also indicate that the income tax had been paid. So kung wala yung ITR na yon at nalitis na siya dahil hindi nga siya nag-file ng ITR, there is no longer any point. Kumbaga, na-establish na yung fact na yon. Further stipulation, so So, yung stipulation was that hindi pa rin nag-file ng ITR on 82 to 85 income si BBM, dininay po ito ng Council for Respondent. Tapos finally, sinabi ng petitioners dun sa Ilagan case that the Supreme Court for stipulation, aminin nyo ba na ginrant ng Korte Suprema yung motion to withdraw yung appeal to the Supreme Court? Again, tinanong ni Kong Guanzon, how is that relevant? Kasi sabi ng petitioner, final and executory na yung judgment. Sabi ni Kong Guanzon, aminado na nga sila because they're relying on the commission, on the Court of Appeals decision already to indicate that they paid these fines base dun sa decision na yon. So, ang sinabi na lang ng respondent is, sige, we will admit the withdrawal of the filing in the SC. Tapos, pati yung entry of judgment dates. Okay? Ayan. After that, discussion na yon on the medical certificate. So dun sa later on pinagpresenta yung counsel ni BBM ng medical certificate that was given to them via electronically, and they have 24 hours to give a hard copy to the Commission on Elections. Tapos inagtalaga ang Commission on Elections to Com Guanzon na after that hearing tuloy yung marking of exhibits. So ano yung marking of exhibits? Yun nga yung sinasabi natin, imamarkahan at ika-countersign ng court personnel, or in this case yung clerk of court ng COMELEC, yung pagtanggap nila doon sa mga ebidensya at yung pagtatalaga ng kanilang mga labels. Super tiring yung ganon. Lalo na kung marami kang exhibits. Tapos, binigyan sila pareho ng 48 hours to file their memorandum. Ano yung memorandum? Well, from the word memory, memorare. Okay. It means that you are reminding the court of this. At ang further explanation ni Com Guanzon, i-organize lang ng memorandum nyo yung inyong mga exhibits at yung inyong mga argumento just to tie up your entire case. Kasi nabasa na naman ng komisyon yung petition, yung sagot dun sa petition, at yung balik-balik na sagutan nila dun sa ilang mga issues. So yung memorandum is just to take all of those arguments together, connect the exhibits to them so that makikita ng hukuman, ito yung assertion, ito yung pruweba. So that they can decide, one, what are the facts in this case, two, finally determine what the issues are, and then make a decision base doon sa mga issues na yon. Okay? Now, bakit ko dinaanan lahat ito? Kasi madalas umaabot sa atin yung mga reklamo na ang bagal-bagal ng sistema ng ating katarungan dito sa Pilipinas. So, I want you to see, at dito, ito maganda to pagka pinapakita yung nitty-gritty of how a courtroom hearing is conducted. It's about 60 to 70% what we call detailed work, meaning yung pagtatalaga ng ebidensya, pag-stipulate ng facts, paghimay-himayin mo lahat yan, determine what are facts, what are arguments, what are conclusions, and so on. So yun yung ginagawa even before the case begins. So, and then pagdating sa hukuman, every time you assert something, tatanungin ka, what is your proof of that? And proof, di ba, is determined based on the relevance of the evidence. Okay? Konektado ba to? Kung kunwari, ang sinasabi ng kabila, hindi nagbayad si BBM. I have here, my evidence is a certification from the Regional Trial Court na hindi po nagsumite ng evidence ng proof of payment si BBM sa RTC. So that, they can, well, if there is no other evidence presented, pwedeng isipin ng COMELEC, oo nga no, kung nagbayad siya, bakit hindi siya nag-file ng compliance na sa RTC? On the other hand, sasalagin yan ngayon ng respondent at sasabihin, yes, but we paid in the BIR, which is where you should actually be paying the fine. So, papakita nila ngayon yung ebidensya. Now, ang magiging argumento ng bawat partido is, dun sa kabila is, if it is not filed with the RTC, then it didn't happen. Doon naman sa respondent, it did happen because we filed it with the relevant agency, which is the BIR, and only the BIR can accept the fines pursuant to this case. Okay? Tinatanong ni Sunshine Lee, bakit ayaw ni Com ng 15 days? Because they want to resolve this faster. Unang-una, matagal na yung balikan ng mga petition, sagot, counter-sagot, sagot uli, bagong issue, sagot. We don't know how many times there was a back and forth there. Kasi sabi nga ni Com Guanzon, teka muna, ayaw niyo mo bang mabilis? Bakit humihingi kayo ng 15 days? Ang kailangan natin intindihin is unang-una, kaya humingi ng 15 days sa mga abogado dahil sanay kami sa 15 days, 10 to 15 days to file memoranda. Ang mangyayari niyan, may mga hindi matutulog mamayang gabi because hindi biro gumawa ng memorandum. Ngayon, kung maayos yung kanilang mga computer files, yung iba, medyo cut and paste na lang yung mga yan. Usually kasi by this point in the proceedings, tapos na yung research mo, tapos na yung marking mo of evidence, all you have to do is put them all in a memorandum. Now, the memorandum is also optional. Kaya pwede sabihin ni Com Guanzon na, sige, 24 hours, or in this case, 48 hours. So, huwag na kayo humingi ng extension, pinatatagal nyo lang. So, ang nakikita natin dito is ready na. Ibig sabihin, kahit yung COMELEC, especially si Com Guanzon, nabasa na niya, may idea na siya ng mga issues, she just needs to look dun sa pag-organize nila ng kanilang mga ebidensya in congruent dun sa mga argumento nila, kung anong panig is, which side is making more sense. Okay? Yeah. Sabi ni Chrislyn, may nag-post sa page ni Sas, kabit daw umattend si BBM sa hearing. Anong kabit? Bakit? Bakit hindi umattend si BBM? As we mentioned earlier, he was exposed to COVID from his security and from his spokesperson, si Attorney Vic Rodriguez, and so has had to isolate. Okay. Ngayon, gusto kong malaman kung bakit may mga tao na kinakabahan. So, bakit kayo kinakabahan? Halimbawa, kasi may mga nagsasabi na parang hesitant daw si Attorney Hana. Ganito po kasi yon. Ang mga abogado, usually, you have one or two talents that are necessary for litigation work. Magaling ka magsulat, magaling ka magsalita to make your oral argument. Now, not all lawyers are very good at oral argument, but they can be very, very good writers. And most of the legal work is done by writing. So, hindi rin magandang basihan para kabahan or mag-conjecture base dun sa nangyari kanina sa preliminary conference kung mananalo o may matatalo o mananalo ang isang partido o matatalo sila. So, wala pong basihan. Ang magiging basihan lang po ng COMELEC ay yung ebidensya, yung argumento at yung batas at saka jurisprudence na naaangkop dito sa kaso na to. Alright? Tinatanong ni Hana Mitch Tolentino, tama po ba pagkaintindi ko na kapag deny ang sagot ni Atty. Hana, ang magpapakita ng evidence ay counsel ng Akbayan? Yes, or counsel ni Bonifacio Ilagan et al. The engineer says, di yan papadala kung di yan competent. Kakahiya naman sa nag-discriminate sa kanya. Lawyer ba kayo o nag-law school? Hindi naman siguro. Worried lang sila. Because of course, naman, uh, because of course, ang magiging basehan lang is the hesitance of the lawyer. But I don't think she's hesitant about the case. Maybe a little intimidated by Com Weng, but that is natural for any lawyer because Com Weng is really larger than life. If you know her, she's yeah, you get the impression that she fills up the room. Ganun po si Com Weng. Right? Um, and she has very strong opinions, but to be fair, she's also a very good practitioner. Whether before nasa private practice siya or now as commission on elections commissioner, I don't think that anybody can question her competence in whatever position that she takes. Ah, kung manalo si BBM, kanino mag-a-appeal ang petitioner? Sa NBank ba o sa Supreme Court na? Most likely sa Supreme Court na. Or, yeah, Supreme Court na. Tinatanong ni Ma'am Pinay, papatulan ko ba itong mga naliligaw na kaluluwa? Maha-highlight sana yung mga comments nila para masagot ni Attorney Trix. Ano ba yung tanong? Ah, ah, hindi ko makita yung iba eh. Yung Division 2 naman po, tinatanong ni Richard Factis, bakit tahimik? Bakit? Kailangan bang maingay sila? As a matter of fact, talaga naman tahimik dapat ang COMELEC. Kasi they're being asked to be objective. So kung daldal masyado sila, then people might question their objectivity. They have to be circumspect about what they say. Right? Sabi ni John Mariching, natatawa ako sa mga attorney kasi para silang kabado kay Gonzon. Pero tawa ako ng tao, pinagtatawanan niya yung mga attorney ng Akbayan. Hindi niya pinagtawanan, pinagalitan niya or pinagsabihan niya. Hindi na pinalitan. She's even scarier when she's angry. Hindi pa galit yan. Ang lagay na yan. She was just being firm. So, if ma-DQ si BBM, tinatanong ni Jim, di ako naniniwala. Sabi niya, is there a chance na pumalit sa kanya si Amy Marcos? Well, magkakaroon lang ng ganun na issue if the disqualification is already final. Kasi the presumption right now is that he is a valid candidate at kailangan patunayan niya ng lahat na magcha-challenge ng kanyang candidacy. Pag hindi sila nakaabot sa evidentiary requirement or hindi nila na-overturn yung presumption na yon, then he is still considered a candidate and it might take a while. So, sabi ni Dennis, lampas na sa date. Hanggang ngayon, wala pa ring declared na pangalan. May mali dito ang COMELEC. What do you mean wala pa ring declared na pangalan? Naglabas na po ng final list ang Commission on Elections and they say for publication yan tomorrow. So, wala pong ganyan. Huwag naman po tayong ganyan. Hindi kasi ang ayoko is yung mauuna tayong magduda, wala pa tayong ebidensya para magduda tayo. Kasi alam nyo, ganito yun din if you will notice, nagpa-participate si BBM dun sa paglilitis. Nagpa-participate siya sa eleksyon. Ito ay indikasyon na tinatanggap niya at pinagkakatiwalaan niya na ang mga proseso dito ay legal at regular. Okay? And if he trusts the system, exactly because he has filed this candidacy and is running, then that is the presumption that we all undertake. Kapag sa tingin natin, kapag sa tingin ni BBM, merong irregular dito, then hindi ako nagdududa, nagagamit na magfa-file ng nararapat na kaso or maybe motion kung may existent na kaso para questionin yung irregularity na yon. Sabi ni Eston, classmate po yata ni Senator Amy, si Comweng sa College of Law, parang nabanggit in one of the interviews and kasama siya sa picture sa COMELEC when she won. Oh, I see. Uh, uh, Okay. Hinahanap ko yung mga ano eh, yung mga questions. Ito, Pacello Lau asks, in case of conflict between Section 12 of the OEC and relevant provisions of the NIRC, what prevails? Well, it will depend. Okay, unang-una, yung provision na sinasite dun sa National Internal Revenue Code was created, if I'm not mistaken, in 1997, parang ganon. So if that's the case and it is a criminal proceeding, then an amendment to the law can only be read to benefit the accused and not to uh, n- to benefit the accused kasi parang double jeopardy yan kung mag-i-impose ka ng penalty or malalala yung kaso niya for a law that was not yet in existence at the time of the act that you're saying is illegal. So, marami pa pong ano, argumento diyan. Yung ano, Section 12 na 'yan most likely ay aakyat sa Korte Suprema kung 'yan po ang magpe-prevail o yung provision ng NIRC. Di ko makita yung mga ano eh, kinagagalit ninyo ng mga ano eh, ng mga comments. Baka binablock nila ako. Sabi ni Christian, bakit po ngayong mga abogado kami nag-akusa kayo maglabas ng ebidensya? These can be seen on lawyers, law students, and kakampings. Well, ako, I don't like to make a sweeping generalization. Basta pag nakikita natin yung mga ganyan, we have to call them out. Remember yung sinasabi natin that the presumption is always of innocence. Kaya, kailangan magpresenta ng ebidensya lahat ng magsasabing hindi siya inosente o hindi inosente itong taong ito. O kaya, in this case, sinasabi ng kabila, hindi qualified si BBM. So, kailangan, nasa kanila yung burden para patunayan yan. So, minsan kasi, I suppose, it might be na they're just super involved dun sa kanilang panig na nahihirapan silang, to argue it logically. I'm sure matatauhan din yon later on. Eto, sabi ni Raymond Lagorto, magkaiba po ba yung DQ case ni Attorney Ten Akbayan? Yes po. Yung kaso ni Attorney Te is for the cancellation of certificate of candidacy at ito po ay disqualification cases. It goes into whether or not he is qualified to be a candidate. Ang question dun sa cancellation of COC is whether or not he lied on the certificate of candidacy. So, hindi related yan since they are separate cases. The dismissal of one does not lead to the dismissal of the other at hindi rin vice versa. So, yung mga nagtatampo dyan, katulad ni Verhel, nauubos na data niyan, di naman daw nakikita. You have to understand, there are how many comments here and I only choose at random. Bakit ganun? Kayo pa yung galit sa akin. Kakaloka. Walang duda na mananalo si BBM sa kasong ito. Well, yeah, we're not allowed to argue a particular side or another kapag sub judice. But of course, I'm not sure if the sub judice rule will apply here because the COMELEC is not necessarily a court. It is a quasi-judicial agency. Kung ipipilit nilang i-disqualify si BBM, baka maulit ang Pilipino, not only EDSA revolution. Not a good I don't really like a conversation that heads that way because no matter what you will inadvertently or deliberately be inciting to rebellion. Florence says, kung ano ang nangunguna sa survey, syempre siya yung babakbakan. That's all. Exactly. So we also always have to expect this. Kung sino yung bida, yun yung bibirahin. Di ba? So, alam nga naman birahin nila yung talunan na, sayang effort. Okay. Ano yan? Sino si Jaya? Di ba, attorney, mas mabigat ang kaso ni De Lima compared kay BBM? Bakit yan tinitignan ng COMELEC kahit walang petitioner? Excuse me. uh, Hindi po yan argumento for or against BBM, ha? If another person is qualified or not has nothing to do with BBM unless they have the same case or there is a case decided by the Supreme Court and set as a legal precedent that will apply to BBM. So yung sinasabi ninyo na kaso ni De Lima, excuse me po, hindi pa po siya tapos na malitis. In fact, one of her cases has been dismissed. The other two, nagpipresenta ng ebidensya ang panig ni Madam Laila. And what were we saying? The presumption is of innocence, meaning habang nililitis siya, inosente pa po siya. Hindi pa po siya nahahatulan. And because she is innocent right now, presumed to be innocent, then she can be a candidate. Now, itong mga disqualification cases that are filed before the COMELEC, these are not criminal cases like Senator De Lima is going through. But there is also the presumption that he is qualified. Kaya nga kailangan maghain ng ebidensya yung mga petitioners dito, nasa kanila yung burden. Huwag niyo po i-compare ang apples to oranges. Kung kayo, nagagalit kayo kung bakit inaalaw si De Lima, ina-explain namin because of the presumption of innocence. Now, what if it is a candidate that you favor? Hindi ba magagalit kayo pag sinabing, oh, itong taong to, di dapat ito pinapatakbo kasi may kaso? Diba? Gaya ng sinasabi ng kabila. O yan, si BBM, convicted yan eh. Teka muna, convicted sa RTC, it was appealed in the Court of Appeals and that conviction was overturned or modified. So, diba? It's two sides of the same coin. If you want to be fair, you must be fair to all parties and to recognize na the law wants to be fair. Kasi tignan nyo kung pwede tayong mag-disqualify kahit nililitis pa yung kaso o kaka-file lang ng kaso, what's to stop someone from filing a criminal case against BBM no matter how walang kwenta? At kung pending yung criminal case na yan, hindi siya papayagan tumakbo? I-substitute niyo yung characters para nakikita ninyo how fair you want the proceedings to be. Si Laila De Lima, hindi pa po nako-convict yan. Kaya pwede pa siyang tumakbo. Kasi otherwise, what if? What if? O yan, gusto natin si BBM, kasuhan siya ng criminal case, magkaroon ng probable cause, pero wala naman talagang malamang hindi siya mako-convict later on. Pero while that case is pending, hindi siya makakatakbo. Imagine how you're going to feel. Anong role naman ni Carpio? Ba't nag-appear na naman siya? Does he have some influence on this case? No, but you can be a spectator and you're allowed because hearings of this nature are usually public. And although minsan hindi po pinapayagan ng cameras, pinapayagan yung may mga manonood subject to space considerations. Because all hearings are supposedly public hearings. Why does the Kakampink insist that canceling a candidate's right to be elected is a sign of a healthy democracy? Democracy ba kung hindi namin boboto yung gusto namin? Sir Timothy, I don't think it's just them either. I think we must be fair. There are people who are asking, bakit tumatakbo si De Lima? Diba? Hindi pa nga siya convicted. Okay? So, same. Yung mga dapat hindi pinapatakbo si Laila De Lima. That is also insisting on canceling a candidate even if that candidate has not been proven guilty yet. Ito, sinasabi ni Jerlyn, legit na sa Bakwin pero di pa siya nahahatulan na guilty. But how will you say na legit na guilty siya kung hindi hukuman ang magsasabi? May proof na po na siya'y mandarambong. Wala pong ganon. Kasi wala pong kaso for robbery, graft, even plunder, even if it was created much later, and so on. Ang meron kaso are for forfeiture, which means na dun sa forfeiture cases, it means na hindi lang magkatugma yung money na na-earn mo during that time as compared to the money that you were earning as a government official. Kung yun lang ang declared income mo or yun lang yung presumed na income na kinita mo. It has nothing to do with pandarambong, wala pong ganon. It's a civil case na kukunin yung sobra na sa kinita mo during that time. Okay? So, hindi po, you cannot equate it with a criminal case for graft or a criminal case for plunder, malversation, technical malversation, even malfeasance and nonfeasance. Hindi po siya pareho. And it is a civil case. Kaya hindi natin din masasabi na siya ay nakulong para doon or na-convict. So, yung proof na sinasabi ninyo ay proof. Pagka sa criminal cases, yung evidentiary requirement ay proof beyond reasonable doubt. So, mabigat. Pag sinabi mong guilty, ganun kalaki yung ebidensya na naipresenta. Pero in a civil case, tinitignan lang kung sino yung panig na mas maraming ebidensya at yun ang pinapanigan. Alright? So, para lang hindi kayo masyadong nagmumukhang, how do you call this? Insistent. Ma'am Lisa, 89, thank you very much. Sabi ni Ma'am Lisa Willett, hopefully this hearing will be fair. Hopefully Guanzon is fair. She sounds like Miriam Defensor in a good way. Because that's how we're taught in UP. Our professors are like that. Sabi ni Joffrey, my mom is solid BBM po at she's somehow affected by the disqualification case. Parang ganyan po ang puno kung mabunga siya, yung pinupukol ng pinupukol. Pero naaaliw po ako sa lutang moments ni Lenny. Yes, I understand. Kasi syempre, pag pumapanig tayo kay BBM, nakaka-stress din yung dami ng mga kaso na ito. Gayunpaman, kaya natin hinihimay ito para meron tayong understanding ng issues at saka ng kaso. At nakaka-participate tayo dun sa tinatawag nating national conversation. Alam niyo kung bakit importante yung national conversation? Kasi yung values natin bilang taong bayan, ninonote din yan ng ating hudikatura. Is the public, diba, nagbabago kasi yung values natin eh. At yung mga values na yun, sometimes they're incorporated in the law and sometimes it takes a while for the law to catch up. So when the Supreme Court interprets certain provisions of the law or the Constitution, they also do this against a yardstick of societal values. So, yung mga pag-participate natin sa mga conversations na ganito, sa mga discussion natin, nakakatulong ito sa pag-evolve ng ating judicial system, whether you believe it or not. Okay? Natanong ni Ma'am Jackie, when is the final decision? That's really up to the COMELEC. Kasi pa sila, aaralin pa nila yung mga memoranda, tapos meet sila yung division or later on yung NBank. They will discuss and then they will vote on whether or not to uphold the petition or to deny it. Tinatanong ni Popoy, ano po ba yung memorandum na ipinapasa po sa mga abogado in 48 hours? Di po kasi malinaw audio ko kanina. Well, ang sinasabi nga ni Com Guanzon, it's simply yung pag-present ng lahat ng kaso mo at i-organize mo. So halimbawa, para sa iyo, ito yung facts ninyo, ito yung issue ninyo, ito yung arguments ninyo at ito yung ebidensya. So i-organize mo lang lahat yan para cohesive yung mga argumento na nailabas na in the course dun sa pagsasagutin nila ng pleading. From petitioner, answer, petition, answer, tapos nagkasagutan pa sila. In between that, in writing, so i-organize mo lang lahat yon para ipresenta in a cohesive whole yung kaso mo. Ano yan optional yan. Pwede namang hindi mag-submit. Sabi ni Ma'am Z, yan. Salamat sa napakagandang paliwanag about the hearing today sa DQ case ni BBM versus Akbayan. Nina Reyes says, lumabas na po yung certified list of candidates pero sa January 15 pa ang printing of ballots. Ibig sabihin po ba pwede pa ding mawala ang name ni BBM? Hoy! Of course not. Malayo po talaga yan. Remember what I said? That the presumption is that he is qualified. So, para matanggal yan, kailangan magpatunay yung kabila, magkaroon ng desisyon, at yung desisyon na yon ay pinal. So, habang hindi pa final yung desisyon na yon, BBM will remain a candidate in this case. The presumption is in his favor. Kasi, kailangan sabihan ng kabila kung bakit hindi siya qualified. Uh, Is it right for Guanzon to only give hi to you, BBM's counsel 48 hours to submit respective memoranda when they ask for 15 days? Actually, both parties are required given only 48 hours. And yes, it is all right because ang purpose nito is to expeditiously decide the case. Tinatanong ni Tespi if the petition has been denied by the COMELEC and they still file it again. No. No, they are given all the opportunities now, and they have had the time to organize their evidence. And if they fail, they can file a motion for reconsideration or go to a higher court. But definitely, they cannot refile. Kailangan po kasi may katapusan yung mga kaso. With all that they throw against BBM, I like how BBM composes himself very chill and good vibes. Yes, that is in fact the entire vibe of Uniteam. They're they're also there's like an advocacy here nakikita natin. Si BBM is BBM and Inday Sara are Uniteam. So the emphasis being unification at kung papansinin ninyo, hindi sila patola dun sa mga criticism sa kanila, if any, hindi sila patola dun sa mga issues. BBM allows his lawyers, of course, to make the statements pertaining to the case, pero siya mismo chill. Because, yun nga he has to walk the talk. Diba? Maghihikayat sila ng Madam Inday ng Unity tapos magiging palaaway siya. It just doesn't jive. Okay? So, ako, I like that idea because after Duterte has cleared the way, kumbaga, si Duterte the destroyer, para siyang si Kali. Kali is the goddess of destruction that makes creation possible. So in BBM's case, waxing poetic tayo ha. In the case of Duterte and now with the Unity, Duterte had to to destroy gods. Kumbaga, he is the iconoclast, destroying the established beliefs and building up new ones. And because he had done that, BBM and Inday Sara can now propose a more harmonious platform. Kumbaga, yung less palaaway and more drawing people into nation building. Tara, we can't do this kung masyado tayong nag-aaway all the time na walang katuturan na yung away. So, Unity, that Duterte has already gone on to destroy all these clay and false gods, etc. Ngayon, the Unity team now is working towards nation building and creating national identity, creating national unity. Sabi ni Hinem, bakit hindi si Attorney Mendoza nag-represent kay BBM? Okay. Here's a secret of some law offices. The preliminary conference, hindi po yan masyadong earth-shaking. In other words, hindi siya necessarily make or break. You can prepare for it in advance, and when in doubt, you can always deny the stipulations, katulad nga sinabi ni Com Guanzon. So, hindi kailangan yung superstar ninyo yung nandyan sa preliminary conference. In this case, yung mga superstars will be making the pleadings or the memoranda, which will be drafted, of course, by the associates first. All the research is going to be put there, and then probably one of the superstars will make the draft or make the final draft, and this will all be read by the other councils to further checking. So hindi po kailangan yung kumbaga para kayong gumamit ng kanyon dun sa langaw. But not a very good analogy, I will admit, but you don't need Attorney Mendoza and something like that. Siguro we can the BBM party can use him in the Supreme Court if there's going to be oral argument, or for him to help draft the pleadings before the court, the higher court. Ma'am Maggie says, just like in any battle, later pa ilalabas ang alas. Preliminary pa lang yon. Actually, that's the only hearing in the COMELEC. The rest will be through pleadings. And in fact, the only other action left is for the filing of the memoranda. And that's it. Uh, Marlo de la Cruz says, grabe nga dito sa Iloilo, ipipilit talaga nila manalo si Inang Lugaw nila, mag-one Iloilo daw para kay Lenny. Akala mo naman walang mga BBM Sara supporters na taga Iloilo. Okay. Sabi ni Owen Friday, don't bring a cannon to a knife fight. I agree. Eto, sabi ni Regor Edzagal, enjoy ako mag-preside si Gonson. Mukhang fair naman. Yes, but like I said, well, yeah, she's always fair. Sa totoo lang. We have to separate her political opinions and personal opinions from the way that she handles her hearings, from the way that she presides as a COMELEC commissioner in her division. So, yung merong mga iba nagugulat dyan. In fact, maraming nagulat. Remember, when Justice Leonen was asking yung mga petitioners doon sa anti-terrorism law, di ba nakakabilib din? Magaling kasi si Justice Leonen. Huwag nating iisipin na hindi siya magaling simply because we disagree with his political opinions. Hindi po ganun yun. Kailangan marunong din tayo magkilatis because in the end, diba, their ability to argue these cases will be what the COMELEC will determine dito kung sino yung nananaig, yung tama yung argumento at naaangkop yung kanilang ebidensya. Okay? What will happen po kaya kapag na-print na yung ballot with BBM there tapos tsaka palang lalabas ang resolution ng COMELEC disqualifying BBM? Now, if it is a disqualification, allowed po ang substitution. So, votes counted for BBM will be counted for the substitute if there is a substitute. Now, if it is the cancellation of certificate of candidacy, wala pong substitution doon, and votes counted for BBM will be considered stray votes. VP Lenny Robredo says, he is perpetually DQ because he cannot use ex post facto law kasi 86 ang June ng filing. Plus, he misrepresented his COC. Uy, excuse me, bakit hindi pwedeng it's not ex post facto, it's ex post facto. Now, and what ex post facto means is that the later law is being used to retroact, parang ganon. Kasi 86 ang due ng filing. Yes, while it was 86 yung due po ng filing, yung sinasite po ng petitioners is the section that was created only much, much later in the 90s. So, if you're going to use that citation, then you can only use it to benefit the accused and not to the detriment of the accused. Ex post facto din po. Hindi po naman kami ang nagki-claim niyan. It is actually in the pleadings themselves. And in fact, ito yung argument ng petitioners did not take this into consideration. So in 1982 to 1985, yung perpetual disqualification po na yan ay hindi po nag-a-apply dahil wala pa yung provision na yon. So it would not be fair to make it apply to him kung yung act, yung criminal act was still in 1984 to 86. Yun yung obligation of filing eh. So, yung perpetual disqualification po na yan did not appear until much later. Pero during the time that he allegedly committed the crime, wala pa po yan. So, you cannot apply a heavier penalty that was not imposed by the law that was existent at the time of the act. Yun po yun. But that is the argument of BBM side. Let's see what the COMELEC is going to say. Sabi ni Ian, kinabahan ng supporters ng mag-demand si Guanzon ng Zoom meeting with BBM ora-orada. Merong sindakan lang ang ganap kasi. I see. But because nga, it is a serious matter. Pwede siyang ma-default for that. Pero tinanggap naman ng COMELEC yung kanyang medical certificate. And I don't think that Guanzon made such a big deal out of it. Reasonable naman yung sabi niya, if he's capable, I want to see him. Hindi naman pala siya capable precisely because he had to be in isolation. Anong mangyayari if di pa din makapaglabas ng final resolution ng COMELEC provided na maabutan ng retirement period what do you mean? uh, they have to decide it before the next elections. Kaya nga, di ba, 48 hours lang binigay ni Com Guanzon. It's so that they can make the decision immediately. Alam naman po ng COMELEC yan. Now, there are certain instances na hindi nagagawa ng COMELEC yan. And the case in point here is the case against Leni Robredo when she ran for Congress. Diba? In 2013, kung di ako nagkakamali. Doon, kinasuhan siya ni Mrs. Villafuerte, the wife of the late Congressman and Governor Luis Villafuerte, Sr. Dahil supposedly tumanggap siya ng mga donasyon from foreign sources. So, in that instance, medyo glaring nga na nagtagal sila. But on a case like this, I don't think that they will. Ma'am Rachel says, hola, buenos dias. Nakahabol pa rin kahit paano. Ulitin na lang maya. Feliz Dia de los Reyes. Here in Madrid. Talaga? Day of the Kings? Nice. Popoy Batching says, bakit po sinabi ng petitioner na hindi pa din nag-file si BBM until now ng ITR? Yun din ang tinatanong ni Com Guanzon. In fact, sabi ni Com Guanzon, what is the relevance in this case? So it was denied by the respondents. So ang sinasabi nila is that, I don't know, kasi parang hindi ko nakita yung argumento na yon dun sa kanilang mga pleadings na parang pinapalabas nila may crime pa rin kahit na na-impose na yung penalty. Ang sinasabi ni Com Guanzon, what is the relevance? Kaya nga nagkaroon ng conviction dahil hindi siya nag-file. So, and he has already paid for it. 'Di ba? Hindi sinasabi ng in fact even the BIR is not demanding for him to file an ITR later on. Sabi ni nung ano ba, may Bongbong Marcos, may VP Lenny. Ex post facto lang di pa ma-type. Saka narinig ko kay Kong Marcoleta na need ng maximum penalty to trigger perpetual disqualification. Yes, well, penalty, base dun sa Omnibus Election Code, wala nga perpetual, kasi ang drafting dun sa National Internal Revenue Code is conviction. Pero if you read the fine print, I don't want kasi na isugod o iusbong yung argumento kaagad nung kay BBM until it is brought out by their lawyers themselves. Pero nakikita ko na kung ano yung magiging defense ni BBM. Yeah. Sabi ni Vicente Fernandez na lecture ni attorney si Leni Robredo. I hope the message gets on Lenny's nerves. Grabe kayo. Ang sarap lang kantsawan. Nakakatuwa, sabi ni Lani Cervantes, at nakakatawa ka kasi sinasagot mo talaga kahit alam mong troll. Ang sincere pa ng sagot mo. Pine-presume ko rin kasi na sincere sila. Hindi naman sila ganong kagulo. Sabi ni Ma'am Karen, doon natin makikita that a career about what you is separate from personal perspective. Opinion politically. Maybe she knows that the voters expect dapat tama at patas lang. Na-correction toll account ni Phoebe. Sabi ni Nay Ngu, professional yan si Guanzon, ibang trabaho sa personal na opinion niya, establishing facts ang mga counsel, dapat yun ang pagbabasehan nila. Yes. Sabi ni Ma'am Margie, that's why I love to listen to you because your opinions are fair and just. Just by, thank you for being unbiased in all issues. So, uulitin ko din ha, ito nakikita natin yung preliminary conference. This is one of those tools na nagpapaikli ng ating mga hearing. So, kailangan reality check para dun sa mga nagsasabi na ang haba-haba, ang tagal-tagal ng hustisya dito sa Pilipinas, ganyan. I want you to know whereof you speak. Kumbaga, para makapag-issue kayo ng opinion na informed at may basihan sa facts at saka sa existing conditions. So yung mga humihirit na ang mga humihirit na masyadong mabagal dito. Tignan nyo, si BBM hanggang ngayon, hindi pa nade-decide yung kaso niya. Sa totoo lang, mabilis pa po ito. If you will see kung ganong karaming detalye. Kaya meron akong word na minutiae, kasi minsan uungkatin ng hukuman or ng quasi-judicial agencies lahat ng mga maliliit na bagay na yan. At magdedemand sila ng ebidensya. Anong ebidensya mo dito? Anong ebidensya na sinasabi mong personal opinion niya yan? How can you prove that? Prove that. Yung mga ganyan. Sabi ni Mario, isn't it true that only the Supreme Court can declare a crime as moral turpitude? A crime involving moral turpitude. Yes, it's the Supreme Court who determines that. But they determine that based on existing cases. So, kung kunwari, sasabihin ng panig ng mga petitioners, yung failure to file ITR should be considered a crime involving moral turpitude. Kailangan umakyat yan sa Korte Suprema para sabihin ng Korte kung tama yon o mali. The court cannot invent these things out of thin air. They can only voice out. They can only issue their opinions based on an existing case. So hindi natin din pwedeng sabihin, oy petitioner, asa ka naman. Hindi nga sinasabi ng Korte Suprema na hindi crime involving moral turpitude yan because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to establish the failure to file ITR as a crime involving moral turpitude. But as of right now, there is no precedent. The Supreme Court has in fact said in Republic versus Marcos that hindi siya crime involving moral turpitude, yung failure to file an ITR. So, ang burden ng petitioner dito doble. Bukod sa they need to prove that this is a crime involving moral turpitude, they have to prove that the pre-existing opinions of the Supreme Court are no longer viable. Ano naman po ang tingin niyo sa legal counsel ni BBM? Parang hindi masyadong handa kanina sa mga sagot niya kanina. Parang hindi siya sure sa mga sagot, especially dun sa resibo ng Land Bank. Ninervyos lang siguro kasi nga she knew that it was online, but I have no doubts about her capability. Actually, she did rather well. Sa totoo lang. Ako I'm very patient kasi with other counsel. Kasi nasasanay lang po kasi siguro tayo sa panonood ng mga Law and Order, yung mga ganyan, kung saan tatas ng mga abogado. Hindi po lahat ng abogado ganoon. But it doesn't mean na hindi sila magaling. Iba-iba po yung talents ng iba-ibang abogado. Meron dyan, hindi ganong kagaling, parang kabado sa hukuman sa harap ng huwes, pero deadly naman magsulat. Ayan. So there are different talents na different yung aangkop. So yung mga counsels who do mostly what we call appellate practice in the higher courts, the Court of Appeals, and in the Supreme Court, usually puro sulat yan. So kami mga hampas lupang trial lawyer sa na humaharap sa hukuman, we get trotted out for oral arguments and for all of that. Kasi required na yung verbal, yung oral arguments, doon magagaling yung ibang lawyers. But don't judge her based on what you perceive as her nervousness. No. The nervousness might only be indicative of the fact na ang dami-dami niyang kailangan alam at alam naman niya lahat. She's just a little worried about how to come across and so on. But hindi, she did not do badly. In fact, she did rather well. Sabi ni VP Lenny Robredo okay, but we will watch the COMELEC. Kapag di nila dinisqualify si BBM, di ba? Gumawa ka na kagad ng opinion mo na you think that the COMELEC should adhere to. Hindi naman po ganon. Bakit? Kailan ba naging utusan ninyo yung COMELEC? ibig sabihin may nabayaran diyan. Hindi po, you cannot even say that as a fact. Kasi nga wala pang precedent. Walang sinasabi ang Korte Suprema tungkol din sa failure to file ITR as moral turpitude. As a matter of fact, in Republic versus Marcos, sinabi nga, I hope I'm right with the title, sinabi na nga ng Supreme Court categorically that it is not a crime involving moral turpitude. So, sinasabi mo, clear ang nakasulat sa batas. Actually, if it was clear yung nakasulat sa batas, yung ganitong hearing, mas mabilis nang natapos at umaakit na tayo sa Korte Suprema ngayon. Pero sige, assume natin that you really and truly believe in that, then you have already made a biased opinion. In other words, para sa'yo, unfair na regardless of how the COMELEC makes a decision, basta hindi ito naaangkop sa opinion mo, regardless of the evidence, the arguments, the jurisprudence, and the laws. That's not a fair opinion. Sabi ni Ma'am Lloyda, why did Guanzon laugh at the petitioner? I don't think she really laughed at him. Pero parang sinasabi niya, huy, preliminary conference ito. Alam mo naman na sa preliminary conference, huwag kang mag-grandstand kasi all you have to do is present your stipulation and agree or deny lang naman. Pwedeng ang sasabihin lang ng respondent, so stipulated or we deny the stipulation. So, yun lang, hindi nag-argue, hindi mo sasabihin na, but you should agree to that. Hindi pwedeng ganon. Tanggap o hindi tanggap lang. So, tapos sinasabi ni Com Guanzon, ganun katagal ka na bang abogado? Oh, matagal-tagal na pala. Na dapat alam mo na to. Sabi ni Ma'am Arlene, Kung Guanzon, kapag di daw nadiki si BBM, may nabayaran daw sa COMELEC, sabi ni VP Lenny. The nerve. Well, that's the reason why it's called a troll account. Kasi they're too afraid to use their own names and make these kinds of statements and be proven and to be shown exactly how sometimes that's misguided or misinformed. Oy, sabi ni Eric, lagi daw barado. Nagkakalat talaga kung san-san si VP. Basta dapat angkop sa narrative. Oy, kayo naman. Di naman si VP Lenny yan. Sabi ni Uli Tawong Laagan, idol ko talaga itong attorney na to. Fair lang, hindi biased, hindi nagbubulag-bulagan sa mga nangyayari. Gaya ng iba, plastic, sumasabay lang sa uso. Eto, sabi ni Alexandria Tequico, how come this issue was not raised when BBM ran for VP or when he ran for senator or congressman? It doesn't really matter because the Supreme Court in a previous case has already said that even if the crime or the issue had happened before and he had run and it had never been raised before, it can still be raised at any time because we don't want to have somebody who was actually disqualified, even if hindi siya na-disqualify noon, a person who is not qualified to assume a position of power. But that is the philosophy behind that. It doesn't matter, really. And it's one of those very few arguments that we disagree with. That it's already established by the Supreme Court that this can be raised at any time. Even if it had not been raised when he ran for senator, for governor, or for whatever, then it can still be raised. It is in fact a valid argument if only it could be supported. Diba? But I'm not sure, at least on my personal opinion, I don't think that the law or the jurisprudence supports the argument of the petitioner. But let's see what the Commission on Elections says. Angel Jinx says, meron akong nabasa, Lenny, sin as in sin. Sin talaga ang mga pinagsasabi niya, 4 times 4, 1600, yung isla nating 17, tsaka yung current. Yun bang gusto ng mga botante ngayon? Well, I think na dapat nilalahad natin lahat ng mga yan. Duelex said Lex, baka sabihin mo the law is harsh for pink lawns, but it is the law. The law is hard, actually, is what it says. Dante Hera says, desperate talaga makalaban na madidikyo si BBM. It seems ito lang ang makakapigil sa pagiging presidente ni BBM by 2022. Itong mga ganap na ganito ang magpaparami pa sa mga boto kay BBM. Let me see. Ah, is it true, sabi ni Ma'am Yolanda, that you cannot disqualify a majority frontrunner? Of course not. That's not true. You can be disqualified if you're not qualified. Diba? If you do not have all the qualifications and none of the disqualifications. So yun lang po ang magde-decide. Whether you're a majority frontrunner or not, you can be disqualified. Provided that there's a law and evidence that will support the argument that you are to be disqualified. Yun lang po yun. Ah, sabi ni Napoleon Bonaparte, ang daming famous people dito sa ating comment section. Puro law na kukunin na course ng rising generation next year. Dahil puro about law yung environment ngayon. I think it's a natural, dito sa Pilipinas, we're almost always concerned with the law. Because, alam niyo yun, it's like we're playing a game, all of us. And the person who knows the rules, medyo may lamang sila. So, kasi we always want to know, teka muna, are we still within the lines? Eventually, we'll come to the point that we have developed to the point where we don't even need to argue anymore, that we accept the boundaries of the law. For some of us, nandun pa tayo sa challenging what those boundaries are. We're still getting used to having boundaries in the first place. Yung mga nagsasabi na pasaway ang mga Pinoy, it's really because we can be very contentious lot. And that contentiousness is part of yung manifestation natin as a communal people. Sabi ni C, gusto kong abogado ni BBM mala attorney Gadon fighter. Well, I think that if BBM wanted him, he could very easily have gotten attorney Gadon if he wasn't busy. But attorney Gadon is running for the Senate. Now, na, ngayon, so, I think that, well, kanya-kanyang it depends rin kasi kung ano yung kaso. So sometimes you need attorney gadon for certain cases that are contentious and need to be brought to the public, and then you need other lawyers who are specialized in election law and so on. So it's really the client's choice dito. Sabi ni Ma'am Karen, ikaw na talaga ang chairman sa DOE, Department of Explanation ng Majority Attorney. Nasaksihan natin today what it's like kung paano ang commissioner mag-handle ng DQ case na ito to resolve it fair and square. Ang dami sikat today watching your live. Baka, basta ako na-appreciate ko ang pa-notebook nagsusulat sa explanation. Sorry kasi makakalimutan ko eh. May kodigo ako na notebook. Oo naman. Sabi ni Red Link, is Attorney Larry still running? Yes, he's still running. And no, his disbarment or suspension case is not going to affect his candidacy as senator. Well, unless it just makes him more notorious and therefore gains him more votes. That's how it could be affected. Pero the legality of candidacy, hindi po ma-affect yan. Ito yun. Hunter's Gaming Area asks, what do you think of the next move of the BBM camp to shut them down? Shut who down? I'm not sure what the antecedent here is. Sabi ni Ma'am mali. Pag nademanda po ba, pero dismissed or withdrawn, kasama pa rin sa hit sa NBI? Yes po. Pag acquitted ka, kasama pa rin sa hit sa NBI. That's, which I think is not a good idea, but it's there. Ito, sabi ni Ma'am Melanie, what is the likelihood of the preliminary hearing in your legal assessment? Who got the point? There's no winner or loser here. Except siguro, medyo jahe yung napapagalitan ka ni Com for parang not knowing what to do during a preliminary conference. But I don't think it's not really that embarrassing. In the preliminary hearing, like I said, this is really to get those details out of the way and to help organize it for the court, or in this case the COMELEC. So wala tayong ano dito on who is better, who is worse, because you're going to uh, debate a case based on the merits. So whether naaangkop yung argumento na yon at kung naaangkop din o relevant yung mga ebidensya na pinipresenta. Sabi ni Bongbong Marcos, pwede po kaya ilaglag ng isang lawyer si BBM? For example, he or she accepted the job to be BBM's counsel para ipatalo maging spy sa defense. But that violates your attorney-client confidentiality and will affect your professional relationship with your client. You have an obligation to your client to give him trustworthy service. So, hindi po pwede yun. Mabididisbar yung abogado pagka ganon. Okay? Sabi ni Ivan Enriquez, hindi mo po ba bet maging Chief Justice o DOJ? Hindi po. Kasi mas masaya yung maging hampas lupang abogado tapos nagsa-social media. Diba? Okay. So, if there are no further questions, medyo kalmado na kayong lahat ng mga kinakabahan, medyo kumalma na. At saka, I think we should have a newfound appreciation of Kong Guanson's manner of handling her, of presiding. Di ba? Nakakabilib din. I like how she does this. Firm. Of course, there are others na yung super bait, yung mga, counsel, huwag ka nang ganyan. So, may mga ganyan na lawyers. Yung nanay na nanay o kaya lola-lola yung approach. Meron mga ganyan. Meron namang iba na yan. Katulad ni Kong Guanzon na medyo mangangatog ka. Shucks. Yung mga tipong, huwag mo akong pansinin. Huwag sana ako mapansin. Huwag paano ako mapansin. Pinagdadasal ko minsan. Please don't see me. Ganun. Pero I do appreciate it. Nakakatuwa si Kong Guanzon. Pwede po bang mahalungkat ang dayaan ng VP last 2016 kung mananalong presidente si BBM sa Mayo? He will be the head of the executive and will have nothing to do with the judiciary unless he's a party to it. So, I'm not sure what you're saying. Hindi pa naman din tapos, pero by now, moot and academic na. Especially pag naging presidente na si BBM, vindication na yon. And 'di ba? What would be the point? Okay, last two. Sabi ni Moinks, so humble, but please, you're not hampas lupang abogado. Alam ko naman hindi po literal. Thank you. Thank you for that. Sabi ni Ma'am Gladys, dapat palitan lahat ng mga staff sa COMELEC nitong February. Ay, Ma'am, that's actually, if you think that that's a remedy, that kind of remedy is worse than that kind of cure is worse than the disease. Imagine putting so many people who don't know what to do in that office. That's scary. There's a reason why the civil service is supposed to be stable. Sabi ni Ma'am Angel, ang dami ko natututuhan sa channel mo from the long white cloud. Parang gusto ko mag-aral ng law. Ingat lahat dyan. Siguro sometimes we'll have to talk about archaeology para naman merong mag-archaeologist o mag-historian. Ganon. Okay? So, alright. Ang sipag naman ng mga accounts na ito. Thank you. May sked po ba kayo sa DWIZ yung nagsasama kayo ni Attorney Chong and Attorney Ahmed? That's usually on Tuesdays. Anong date po ba ang prohibited mag-appoint ang presidente ng government position? Something like 30 days before. And finally, archaeology. Wow, next po. Oh, well, yeah, kasi, a lot of lawyers aren't just lawyers, no? There's something else kasi may undergraduate work kami, meron kaming postgraduate work, and then we also have our law degree. So you can be a lawyer and still be something else, diba? In fact, so one of my classmates was a biology major, another one was had both chemistry and parang computer science or computer engineering as his undergraduate course, and he was taking law. So we'll also define, well, we'll also be talking about the other matters. Life isn't just politics. It's so much more. Sabi ni engineers, out of topic and tips and traits to ponder. Planning to take JD soon. You have to love reading and you have to have a good vocabulary, um, because you're going to be reading a lot. If you don't like reading, that's going to be your life. So if you don't like it, I look for another career. Kasi that's so many years that you're going to be spending reading. Okay? Maraming salamat. Ay, last. Si Attorney Guanzon, yung tipong parang isang professor mo sa college na terror na nakakabawas ng self-confidence ng estudyante. Totoo yan. Totoo yan. She's very formidable. So, but we shouldn't take that against her, ha? She's formidable, but it's backed up by solid education, solid understanding, and knowledge of the law. So, the same kasi with Justice Leonen. I don't know kasi si Justice Kagiwa, but I know Justice Leonen and a lot of people don't like him because of his political opinions. But he was an excellent law professor. A lot of what my litigation experience was because he was my prof. And if there is any lesson that you pick up from the discussions that I have, you also will have to thank Justice Marvick Leonen because he was a big part of my education. So that's why I don't like to designate villains, no, good guys or bad guys and all of that. Some of them do have track records, but I'd like to judge them more on what they have done, what they have failed to do, yeah, and make opinions based on that. But those opinions also have to take the whole thing into consideration. So kunwari, some people don't like Attorney Gadon because of his language. But the Attorney Gadon I know, while he says things like that, is also this sweet old guy who always is very accommodating every time we need something. So he's actually this huge pussycat. Pero ang tapang niya sa social media. So people aren't just one thing. And if that's something that we should constantly remind ourselves. Diba? So we can't also judge the VP based solely on her thoughtless remarks. There might be hidden good things about her. Unfortunately, so many of them remain hidden to this day, but they're in there somewhere. Ma'am Ili Carrara Selimoser, thank you very much for your super chat. Happy New Year then. Um, Parang also with BBM, 'di ba? The other side likes to play up this person who benefited from the Marcos years, but they don't see the other side of it. And over lunch and whatever sessions we've had with BBM, we know that he's so much more than what they make him out to be. So people are a lot more complicated than what we want. We can't put them into boxes. And so I like the fact that there's a revelation here about Com Guanzon, and also that people get an up close and personal look of how hearings are actually conducted. Para hindi yung ang tagal-tagal naman, bakit lahat yan dinidiscuss yan? Or bakit si Laila de Lima nakakatakbo? Bakit si BBM fina-filean yun ng DQ? Pwede naman filean ng DQ si Madam Laila, pero we have to wait for her conviction kung yun ang gagawin nating basehan. Okay? Maraming salamat sa pagsubaybay. Uy, wag niyong kakalimutan mag-like and share. At saka kung naka-follow na kayo sa Luminous, paki-check kung naka-follow pa rin kayo. Kasi throttled na naman po kami. Hindi ko alam kung ano na naman kasalanan namin sa Facebook. Ngayon pa man, patulong na lang doon sa FB page ng Luminous. Don't forget to unfollow and then follow again para makikita ninyo kami uli sa newsfeed. And then also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you follow other people, I don't ask people not to follow other people. If you follow other people, you can also ask questions sa akin later on in other sessions. Pero what I require is kukumpletuhin ninyo. So kung kunwari, sasabihin nila, Sabi ni Vlogger X, ganito, ito yung pinag-uusapan. So, sometimes I will be able to answer, pero never, never expect us to try to bash other people on that. Posibleng mangantsaw kami, pero hindi kami mambabash ng ibang mga vloggers. Alright? So, maraming salamat, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Meron pa tayong till Saturday or Sunday. We'll check. So tignan na lang natin sa comments if there are additional questions that you might want us to discuss, then we will do so. We'll also be making more short videos for our YouTube channel kasi napansin ko na some people they like the shorter versions na mabilis lang pero wala siyang Q&A. So we're going to do that and going to chop up some of the things that we discussed here and put them in the video section, the short video sections of our YouTube. Maraming salamat. Have a good weekend, everybody.